Today is Monday, August 3rd, 2026. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. In-N-Out's CEO shares a heartfelt message after a gunman's rampage. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. We are so glad you are here with us, getting through the news of the day. We're doing that each and every weekday, bright and early here. And joining me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell. On the focus story, Lynsi Snyder, the owner and president of In-N-Out Burger, has responded to the shooting at an Idaho location of her restaurant chain. Her powerful message and reaction coming up here in just a moment. Also on the main thing, could some college degrees soon lose access to federal student aid? The implications of that possible move coming up here with Madison Seals on the main thing. I want to tell you about our sponsor for this podcast, Christian Solidarity International, and for nearly 50 years, CSI. They've been standing with forgotten brothers and sisters of the faith who have been persecuted simply for placing their faith in Christ. That is something that we really take for granted here. Just placing your faith in Christ and deciding to follow him can put your life in danger in places like Nigeria, even places like India, where there's blasphemy laws and you have radical Hindus or radical Islam going after people who leave those faiths and head to Christianity. And there are crazy situations that happen, kidnappings. Obviously, people are killed. But then you have individuals who are led off into human trafficking, sex slavery, forced conversions, things of that nature. Well, CSI's on the ground working to undo those horrible situations, and they do it through building long-term relationships, boots on the ground. They are there for the long term, and they need you to walk alongside them for those efforts. CSI-USA.org/quickstart is the place to go if you would like to help persecuted Christians in need. CSI-USA.org/quickstart. You'll also see there on their website on CSI-USA.org, you'll see some examples of the types of things they're doing. And these people really do care. And the rest of the world oftentimes just takes a quick look at it and moves on. That's not CSI. They are there for the long term. And you can help them in those efforts. Just go to CSI-USA.org/quickstart. All right, we're going to go to the news in 90 seconds now. And President Trump said he called off what he described as the largest planned bombing campaign since World War II, after requests from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Iran, saying negotiators now believe a deal is possible. Iran denies asking Trump to halt any attack and insists its military remains on high alert. Christian author and ministry leader Cindy Jacobs framed the conflict as part of a larger spiritual battle in the Middle East, saying she believes major change in Iran could reshape the region. You can check out more over at cbnnews.com. And a British millionaire says he's ready to bankroll the legal defense of Christian street preachers, arguing believers are facing a growing double standard. Businessman Samuel Leeds pledged to personally fund legal representation for Christian preachers who face police action, saying Christians should not be silenced for sharing their faith in public. His announcement follows several high-profile incidents involving UK pastors arrested while street preaching, including cases that sparked debate over free speech and religious liberty. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And we have seen several of these stories, not just street preachers, but even just Christian citizens, including a woman who silently prayed outside an abortion clinic and had a police officer actually come up to her and say, "What are you doing? Are you praying?" And then ended up finding her when she didn't want to lie. And she said, "Yeah, I'm praying," silently praying. And they're finding that is how crazy it has gotten in the UK. And it's always really shocking to watch these sorts of stories play out in the UK, because this is allegedly somewhere that reportedly shares our sorts of values when it comes to individual liberties, but apparently not so much. And so to see what's happened there and to see the lengths to which police and law enforcement have gone here to enforce thought crimes, basically. You can't tweet things. I mean, people are posting on social media and having cops show up at their house. This is the sort of thing we absolutely do not want here. I mean, we have had a First Amendment for a long time, even though it's trampled on from time to time. It generally holds up, and we would like that to continue. And so when you look at what's happening over in the UK, it's very concerning. And so it's good to see businessmen like Samuel stand up and do something about it and show that, yes, you are allowed to say the things you believe in. And a society that cracks down on free speech is going to have a whole lot of problems after that. And we've seen that in history time and time again. So I definitely continue for prayers for the UK, but also for here, because we don't want to follow in the footsteps of what they are doing. And there are definitely those here who want to do just that. All right, we are going to go to the focus story now. And obviously there was a big story over the weekend, that tragic shooting at In-N-Out Burger. Lynsi Snyder is the owner and president of In-N-Out Burger, and she's responding to the shooting at an Idaho location. So what's the story here?
Yeah, I mean, she put out a statement. Now, Lynsi Snyder is a known Christian. She's an outspoken Christian. And, you know, on the bottom of the cups, they have John 3:16 at In-N-Out. And so this is something that has long been part of the DNA of that company. And so she put out a statement really lamenting what happened. She said, "My heart is broken. My chest is heavy. My eyes burn from the tears I've shed. We lost one of our beautiful associates tonight. She was taking care of our most important asset, our customers, and her life was taken by a disgusting human who doesn't value the lives of others or his own." And that was just the beginning of the statement. She talked about how this individual shot both on the property and off, and then ended his life shortly after he took the lives of three people. Three people died in this incident, and she said these were innocent people who never saw it coming. And so, a really powerful statement, you know, directly from Lynsi Snyder and the company. But you know, a lot of times companies will put statements out. Lynsi Snyder, you know, I feel like over the last few years has been more vocal and more open as an individual, but she, you know, directly addressed this in the statement and also had a number of really touching things to say as well in it.
What did she say about turning to God specifically?
Yeah, this was interesting. You know, she basically said, you know, look, the company is mourning with the families, praying for them as they navigate this season. She said, "I'm no stranger to loss, but this is so incredibly tough. And my heart also goes out to all the associates and customers who were there during this traumatic event." She said, "I love you all, and I ask you to turn to God, not in anger, but seeking comfort and strength for those who are hurting." And so, you know, she's calling people to turn to God, not to turn to God with anger, but to seek comfort, to ask people to pray for the people who are hurting, because a lot of people, in addition to the victims here, a lot of people were there. They saw it. They were present for it, and it's traumatic for them. And so she's really just calling people to prayer.
And why are police praising an off-duty trooper and citizen?
Yeah, this is interesting. So the Twin Falls police, they said that there were two heroes, this off-duty state trooper, this armed citizen who intervened and saved lives. They apparently fired at this suspect, and they were able to distract the attacker enough to save other people's lives. And in fact, Twin Falls Police Chief Matthew Hicks said, "We believe their actions helped drive the suspect away from the scene, preventing further casualties." And they praised their heroic action to stop this incident. And so because of those two, really, they believe that other people's lives were saved.
Yeah, I mean, that is really horrible event, but bravery in action there. And there, if you might have seen it online, there is some video. It's brief, but there is video of a gentleman wearing, it looks like a cowboy hat or something like that. And it brought the gunman away and saved people's lives. That's very, very selfless act, because he didn't have a ton of cover, and anything can happen if that gunfire turns toward you. And he was probably outgunned as well, having a pistol versus a long gun. So very, very brave, very dangerous. And it's just sad, Billy, that we're seeing more and more of these shootings that happen, that somebody feels the need when they eventually end their own life. Before they do that, they have to go in and shoot other people and take other lives. It's a bizarre and sad phenomena that we're facing as a culture today.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, you know, these things happening again and again and again, how we react to it and respond to it is key. And you have Lynsi Snyder, you know, encouraging people, look, respond to this in prayer. You know, she called the shooter a disgusting human being who had no, value for other people's lives. And she's not wrong about that, but her point was we need to pray and we need to come to God, not in anger and frustration, but seeking his help for those who desperately need it. So there's a lot there, but pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely prayers going out to all involved there. Obviously a very difficult and tragic situation, and people need God. I mean, this is the sort of thing that when you see someone who's lost and hopeless and they've essentially given up on life to the point where they don't value life and they are willing to take life, these are the people before this happens that need to encounter God. And that's why we need to be the hands and feet. That's the way God has chosen to share about him, is through us. So we need to be doing that. And so our prayers as we all go forward in our own circles, that we could impact people outside our own circles as well. So appreciate bringing that story to the podcast today, Billy. All right, we are going to go to the main thing now. The Department of Education is introducing a new accountability test that could have major consequences for colleges and universities. Well, Madison Seals, joined by Heritage Foundation policy analyst Madison Doan, to explain which academic programs could be at risk of losing federal funding and what it could mean for students at higher education. That's today's main thing.
Madison, can you talk about the U.S. Department of Education's new accountability tests, like what it is and how it works?
So this is a new standard. It's called the Do No Harm Earnings Test that was passed by Congress in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, just last year. And basically what it does is that it requires undergraduate programs to demonstrate that their graduates earn more than the typical high school diploma holder. And then also for graduate programs, they will also be required to demonstrate that their graduates earn more than the typical bachelor's degree holder. If a program fails to show at least this kind of financial return on investment for its graduates in 2 out of 3 consecutive award years, it will then lose eligibility to participate in the federal direct loan program. If a program fails for 3 years, then the department can also terminate eligibility for including Pell Grant eligibility for the institution's low earning program.
And it sounds like the principle behind this test is to make sure that taxpayers' money is being well spent, essentially. The Secretary of Education, Nicholas Kent, gave a statement recently saying if a program cannot show that it leaves its graduates financially better off than if they had never enrolled, it should not be underwritten by federal taxpayers. Why is this issue a main focus of the administration's higher education policy changes?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, came out of not only the administration, but the concerns from Congress about institutional accountability. We're seeing rising rates of default and delinquency in the federal 1.7 trillion student loan portfolio. And actually, I think around this month, there was new data that came out that said that 9.5 million people, about one in 5 federal student loan borrowers, are in default, meaning that they are more than 9 months behind on their payments. So just this concern about institutional accountability and the doling out of billions of dollars in federal student loans without some sort of accountability mechanism. So I think that's why Congress acted just last year and created this new accountability standard, this Do No Harm Earnings Test, to enforce kind of those accountability in the institutions.
And this new test raises some interesting questions about the purpose of college. Like, is it just about making more money? And one critique is if you shut down lower earning programs, like maybe ones in the arts, then we'll have a lack of artists and performers and creative brains that could have a negative impact on society. So what are your thoughts on that? And what kind of other programs might fail this new test?
Yeah, well, the good thing is that the department, estimated that only about 5% of programs are expected to fail the test. And I think among bachelor degrees programs, only 1% or less. So really just a very small percentage of programs that are failing to fail are going to be failing the test. But something that the department has talked a lot about, and something we at the Heritage Foundation also note, that this earnings test will not prevent students who are motivated by whatever types of beliefs to enter into these specific programs. It just might make it more costly for students to enter programs that fail the test. And so universities could decide to provide more financial support in the form of scholarships, or look to outside partners or foundations for additional private investment for students who come from low to middle income backgrounds. I know there's a program that this is related to religious institution or religious programs, but Concordia University at St. Paul, they have a church work tuition guarantee program that covers 100% 100% of tuition for students training for specific Lutheran church ministers or professional church roles. So I think it's kind of the role of the university themselves, if they feel like it's a really fruitful program for students, to look towards private investment or to even lower their tuition costs. So that way students aren't having to take out large amounts of federal student loans to cover the cost of the program.
Will students in higher risk programs be immediately affected?
No, not immediately. So I think the collection process will actually not start until later this year. So institutions, they'll begin their kind of data collection procedures by August of this year. And then the first official calculations won't be released until July 1st of next year. So no program will actually lose their eligibility before 2028. And programs that fail, I think, will be notified in 2027. So we've still got some time in terms of programs to kind of to reevaluate and to for students to be able to also kind of look at what are the earnings of their programs and whether or not they should continue on in those programs or decide to maybe pursue something else.
And really, that's something students should be excited about because they could potentially be prevented from getting into a program and a career that they can't pay off, and they end up with tens of thousands of dollars in debt and no career to match it. Anything else about this that you think people should know or understand, or that maybe hasn't been communicated very well about it?
Well, we have to look at kind of the rising cost of tuition. Like tuition has grown exponentially over the last couple of decades. I think it's increased by 439% since 1982, which is 4 times the rate of general inflation. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing this rapid rise is because there's been a shift in spending priorities among institutions. So if you look at from 1987 to 2012, America's higher education system added more than 500,000 administrators, essentially doubling the number of administrators relative to faculty. There's also been this kind of just rat race and seeing who can offer the biggest and most expensive amenities, from raising new student fees to build new student centers, football stadiums, and athletic complexes, all in the hopes of, enticing more students to come enroll in the university. So I think to pay for these increasing costs, students are borrowing more money and taking on more debt to do so. So I think this will force a lot of institutions and programs to kind of relook at what they're charging their tuition rates and kind of refocus their priorities back on the original idea of the education, which was, to instill just higher learning in the student rather than providing them all these additional amenities that they don't necessarily need and are not necessarily going to be benefiting from post-college.
That's a good point. I don't think it's in students' best interest to assume that it's just the norm now to go into massive amounts of debt for a career, when the whole point of getting a career in the first place is to be able to better yourself off, to be able to earn money and build your life. So this seems to be a really positive thing. Have you heard much of a reaction to it?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of organizations, Heritage and others that are really excited about it. I know some, colleges and universities are concerned about it. I think some religious institutions and things are concerned about it. But again, I think this is an opportunity for them to look at, what they're charging in tuition and to look at outside investment and to see how they can potentially make it more advantageous for the student to come and study there and to ultimately lower the cost that the student has to pay overall. So we're really excited about this. Is like one of the first accountability measures that's been passed by Congress in a long time. So we're excited about it.
All right, Madison, appreciate that report there very much. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing. And we're going to take a look at Romans 1:14-16. I am under obligation both to Greeks and barbarians, both to the wise and the foolish. So I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. So there you have it about sharing the gospel, sharing the good news. We should do it boldly. We are under obligation to share that good news to people. That is the charge that God has given us. And so we should go and partake in that gladly and joyfully and with confidence that God is the one who draws near. God is the one who saves. We're merely the messengers. God will do the work from there. All right, that's where we're going to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. Make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com each and every day. Greatly helps us. We believe you'll be blessed by our news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.